All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel, and we're in the business of dropping truth bombs, and mostly truth bombs for diggers, the people that are out there in the truther movement that are doing the digs, but mainly are confined to the 20th and 21st century, and mainly in the political social realm. There's a lot of other stuff out there that you're not digging into. I appreciate what you've done, and it's helped me a lot. And so, I'm trying to pay back a little bit, even though most of you will probably hate me because I'm going to be uncovering stuff that'll be a little bit hard for you to take. Um, hard to swallow, but eventually, once you digest it, you'll realize somebody's doing you a solid. And this section is called Your Blind Side. So these are things that are going to hit you from the blind side out of nowhere. And just things that I encounter in my research that I think might help this movement. This is a great movement, and they're going to win. Um, but it could be a Pyrrhic victory if we don't have it together. There's no resting on anybody's laurels. The other side is going to be vanquished, but that doesn't mean that we're going to saunter into a golden age without a great deal of more sacrificing, more digging, and really more overturning of our general paradigms about everything because we've only gone skin deep so far. We've gone down a century or two, back to at the, really the earliest, the Federal Reserve. We've got a whole 19th century and 18th century to get to, and then we've got to go all the way back because everything has been a psychological operation. Everything has been um, propaganda. Now, that doesn't mean that we're in some type of prison or something and that we are just victims of it. These are all negotiations. There is a limited hangout. They have to throw us a bone just to get us to convince us to buy the psyop in the first place. They've got to put some good stuff in there in the first place, and then we can use the good stuff. Now, I heard some podcast the other day talking about, yeah, well, they use God, but it's really humans that have, taken bad stuff and repurposed it for our own, just like the internet. The internet was intended to be a military, uh, intelligence kind of thing to lock us into a surveillance state and a propaganda state, but we've been able to repurpose it for our uses to be able to share information all over the world and so on. So it's a negotiation. It's going to be partially, um, hegemonic, but it's going to be partially liberating. And the same is true about our religions, Christianity in particular. Christianity is a psychological operation. It was created by the Romans in order to pacify the Jews, and the whole story about Jesus is entirely fictional, but people have used it to inject their own sense of spirituality into it, and they have gotten rid of or ignored a lot of the pornographic and ridiculous stuff that's in their books. Same thing happened with African Americans with Christianity. They were forced to really be Christians as slaves, but they used it to put their own spin on it, their own purpose for it in terms of their own um, religious systems, spiritual systems that they recognize from Africa. And so, it's always a negotiation. There's nothing um, really like dark and negative and just like purely negative. It's a negotiation. But I do think that we really need to look a lot more carefully at our books, particularly the New Testament, but also the Old Testament. And I heard a couple podcasts yesterday. We're talking, and they just they use cliches out of there that don't necessarily, uh, jibe with, uh, what's in there. I think people don't. Again, they give the text a lot more credence than it deserves. It needs to be scrutinized from the start. It's not the word of God. This is a human document. That's why I believe that we need to move forward on the basis of deism. One God. The God doesn't speak any human languages, but speaks through nature, the laws of physics and mathematics, and we can understand God to our limited extent by using our higher faculties to penetrate those nature and the laws, and um, not through books. That's where the corruption comes in. And so everybody was talking about um, this image of God. We were made in the image of God. Um, I'm just going to come from this Mauro Bolino. Uh, Therefore, it should not surprise us that the later biblical versions. Now, first, we all have to recognize, and we go back to Genesis. This is all, Genesis was plagiarized or at least copied from much older texts. This is not the original version. There are dozens of original versions of the book of Genesis. Uh, Throughout the Near East, the Sumerians, but the Akkadians, they all Akkadians. I don't know how to pronounce it, but they all are going from the original Sumerian, and the story of the biblical Genesis in the Sumerian text is much more complete, much more descriptive, and detailed, and it gives a very very different story. But and you can talk about Zachariah Sitchin and how he was a cabal member or whatever. All of this is cabal. Again, it's a matter of repurposing it. Um, the so you have to discern when you look at the evidence. Uh, is this evidence that they're going to be able to manipulate, or are they telling us, giving us some of the truth here? Uh, so the Elohim, first of all, this is the only it's only the first chapter of Genesis where there is one God, and then after that we got the Elohim. Elohim is already in the plural in Hebrew, so the Elohim are in the plural, and then the word Selem, T Z or T S E L E M, used by the biblical authors, does not denote the abstract concept of image. This is according to Mauro Bolino. Um, as it is variously interpreted in religious literature and traditional theology. The definition of the term Zelem, as found under the voice in the etymological dictionary, defines explicitly as, quote, something material that contains the image or a complete form. The word Zelem does not only denote something concrete and material, but also contains in the original meaning of the Semitic word root the concept of being cut off from. Um, the entry Selem reads something cut out of. So when reading this passage with an open mind, we ask ourselves, what is it that contains the image of a human being and can be cut off, cut out, or pulled out? And then he says DNA immediately comes to mind. Maybe some other things come to your mind. Um, but, you know, so when we talk about, a lot of times we talk about coming from the image of God, that makes us a creator. But that's not what this is talking about, because the Elohim are not creators anyway. It's a genetic experiment. They're not, we've already been created. The creation has already happened, and now we're dealing with these Elohim, and they are using an image of theirs, meaning their DNA, to graft into whatever we were, Cro-Magnon man or whatever. And that's what it's talking about. And so that image has absolutely nothing to do with creativity. Now we may still be creative beings, but that's not the origin of it, coming from Genesis 2 or whatever it is. Um, so so the atom is not simply created according to the image of the Elohim. The correct translation would be with the image, or better, with the material, something that contains the image of the Elohim. Um, and yeah, so that's actually, I think, still even in Genesis 1. We don't even get to the end of Genesis 1 before the Elohim are subbed in for the true God. So that's how much your Old Testament is really good for. The first chapter of the first book, not even the whole first chapter, is, and then God rested on the sixth day, and on that sixth day, or seventh day, then it was taken over by the the whole thing was hijacked by the Elohim. And you know then the rest of it is more of a history of our a relationship with these gods with a small g, the Elohim, who are these beings, maybe from another planet, maybe not, who knows, but they are more advanced than we are, and probably smarter than we are, but they're not gods. They have a ton of issues. um, Yahweh Elohim, the one that the Hebrews deal with primarily, is a psychopath. He's got obsessive compulsive disorder. He has a major addiction to smoking animal fat. He is arbitrary, capricious. He is no he's not just in the least. He is indecisive, and jealous and insecure, um, and just has a lot of needs that uh, God wouldn't have. A lot of physical needs that God wouldn't have. So we have to figure out what we're actually looking at and what we're actually dealing with before we start getting with all these platitudes about God would do this. We're always anthropomorphizing God, like, oh, well, God is leading us in this direction. God is doing. We don't. We don't know what and if you feel like you're getting that from your insides, well, then that's your take on it, but it's not anybody else's take on it. So I just feel like the movement is just utterly carried away with this God, this God leading us in a certain direction. God's hands are all over this. And this is mental illness, is what it is. It's not having anything to do with what's really happening. This is your mental illness. And we're not moving into any type of golden age as until we get this issue worked out, because the boss and the 17th letter have withheld this information from us. They have to know that Christianity is a psyop, and that God is not who God thinks who we think it is. And unfortunately, they treat us like children because we're not ready to grasp that. We've got to get ready to grasp that, and then we have to confront them with this information. Again, we have to repurpose what um, what we've been given, in an intelligent way, to for our maximum freedom. Otherwise, we're going to be walking into a technological dystopia that will start out to seem like it's really liberating, but they'll be doing the totalitarian tiptoe, and eventually, before we know it, we're back into, some type of, um, mind control thing. I'm not saying that the powers that be that are out there now are all nefarious. I'm just saying that if we don't um, step up and dig into our own stuff, this is primarily an individual thing. Every individual has to go within on their own. It's subjective. You don't have to accept my interpretations of all this, but I do believe that you need to uh, be open to my interpretations of this and say, huh, let me check that out. Maybe it doesn't check out with you, but I think to dismiss me out of hand is the essence of ignorance, and it is spitting on the truther movement in general. I'm bringing up some issues that haven't been brought up, as far as I know, and I'm just requesting a hearing on them. Again, you don't have to believe what I say, but I think that you should at least consider what I'm saying. Okay, I'll stop right there. And thanks for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, and contribute. And remember to watch your blind side.